Well, Kevin, thanks for coming to talk.
My pleasure.
For Tech at Talk. We just glad to sit down with you. And I guess we can start off with a very simple question, which is, what exactly is Buzzed and how does it work?
Yeah, more than happy to explain. Yeah, Buzzed is an application for your cell phone. We run on pretty much any phone. We run a lot better on the new fancy devices, iPhone, Android, BlackBerry. It's an application that will use social media opinion on interesting cultural places in the city that you're in, bars, clubs, restaurants, museums, art galleries. And it'll basically tell you what's going on, in the city or very specifically nearby to where you are. It's a fantastically interesting way to discover what's going on in a city. We're having a lot of fun with it.
So if I have a cell phone and I'm in New York City, how does it work?
I won't get too technical, but from the perspective of the user, you start up the application, it automatically finds where you are. It will, according to a pre-listed set of categories, which you can obviously customize, it's a highly personal thing. It will tell you effectively within a time interval that you specify and a radius, it could be the block you're on, it could be the neighborhood, it could be the entire city. What are the most buzzy places? And by buzz, we mean social media buzz. Is there information about these places out on the social networks? So we integrate Twitter and Facebook data. And we have a very, very clever technical team who are able to effectively analyze all of that activity and determine these people are talking about this place. And we index tens of thousands of venues in cities all over the US. And it's fascinating. You can watch the pattern of the interest level that people have in different venues within a city changing through the course of the day. If you use the app at 3 a.m., you'll get a lot of people talking about things that are happening in nightclubs. If you were to use it, 8, 9 p.m. In the evening, you'd find people are submitting mini on-the-spot reviews of restaurants. So the strapline we use is your city real time. So in real time, it's kind of telling you what's interesting and what's going on.
That's great. So there's a lot of innovation going on in this space, a lot of young companies doing a lot of interesting things. How does Buzzed compare to some of the other companies that are operating, maybe Foursquare or a Looped or some of the other competitors?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the space is generally termed LBS, location-based services. That's a very broad definition, and our feeling is that within that overall sector, there are many specific opportunities to address different needs. I think probably the most useful and illustrative comparison would be to contrast Buzzed with Foursquare. Foursquare is based on the concept of the check-in by saying, I'm here. I'm sure you're quite familiar with it. You become the mayor of a place. That's an interesting activity, but it's a somewhat isolated activity. Like you're influencing something which is very personally meaningful to you. I don't particularly care whether you're the mayor of any bar or not, but I am interested in if there is a lot of activity around certain places. So the way to look at Buzz is it's an aggregator of other activity created inside of these other services. We actually do import check-in data from that service and some of the other ones that are happening. So I see that there's going to be a whole feast, a whole menu of interesting location-based active applications that you can become a part of. But we really see ourselves in a different part of the market, which is really, it's more for the voyeur. It's like, I want to see what's going on. It's a discovery app. There's a real difference between having to be an active participant of a service to get value from it and a service that will show you what other people are doing. And we think, those are very different things. Buzzed is, in our mind, quite clearly differentiated. Obviously, it takes a little while for the industry and the consumer to be able to see that as a different thing. But we believe there's a very big future in the part of the market where we operate, as there is for all the other services. It's a bit like saying, how different are two internet services? I mean, there's an incredible buffet of things that you can do on these devices, and even the definition of location-based is something which really requires a little bit further analysis. I mean, our app the core data model of it is clearly location-based. It's based upon the concept of activity at a venue. But the app itself doesn't actually require you to be in that city for it to give you useful information. It's a really quite a remarkable experience sometimes. I just see what's going on in Boston. I just say, you can do it in the app. You like choose a city. You don't have to be there. You know, you also, if you're in one part of Manhattan, your next destination may be uptown or across town. So you'd actually like to see location in another part of the vicinity of where you are. So, you know, when Buzz began, I think the concept was very much based on what's immediately around me that's interesting. But I think we've learned over the last year that cities have lots of interesting things going on, and they're not necessarily all that much nearby. So there's a kind of a dual viewpoint, I think, on what the definition of a location-based service is nowadays. So we're all learning a lot. You know, there are probably 10 to 20 quite interesting companies in this sector, and we're all doing something a little bit different. I think that they've all got good prospects, actually.
So now the next question, which I think any good MBA would ask, is how do you plan? Are you making money? How do you plan to make money? You know, what is Buzz's business model?
Yep, we are very pleased to report we do have a business model. We do make revenue. We this month will probably do 50% more than we did last month. So, you know, all of the nice kind of startup growth, you know, potential that you see there. You know, Buzz is an advertising-funded business. You know, we don't anticipate ever charging the user for our application. It provides them with a service. It is effectively advertising things that are going on at venues, but in a very subtle, highly relevant, contextual way. So we do have relationships with some of the, you know, the people who provide content in the system, but it's a completely unbiased point of view. Like we don't drive people to certain venues. The social media activity itself drives people to view information about a venue. So it really is truly hyper-local advertising. You know, when we drive someone to information about a particular venue that shows up in the app, you know, it's a billboard effectively. It's a highly personal, you know, hyper-localized billboard right in front of that person on their phone screen. So that you know, it's extremely monetizable, that real estate, and we do have you know, various partnerships you know, that are monetizing it right today.
Are there any major privacy concerns? I mean, not just with Buzzed in general, but with location-based services?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, privacy is always a concern. The number of actual incidents of people's privacy being compromised in any significant way is vanishingly small. I can't actually really remember the last one. I mean, the whole Google thing in China is fascinating for very different reasons. My feeling on this is that if your back end, if your code is good, if your servers are solid, they are relatively secure. You know, from a technical sense, you know, the technology is good these days. The chances of something being, you know, the old-fashioned way would be hacked is really vanishingly small. I think the more interesting interpretation of your question is probably, do people have privacy concerns about other people knowing their location? I think they probably do, but again, it's actually very easy to prevent people from knowing it. I mean, in our app, in every sense, like, you can block someone knowing where you are. Quite simply, don't broadcast it. You know, turn off the broadcast option. Don't friend somebody that you think might be a stalker. Like, don't do it. So, you know, I don't want to be glib about it, but the way that these applications are designed, everything is highly configurable. And I think where we're going with our app is just an incredible level of personalization, where you can basically, even within your friends, select that when you do a certain thing, that may get broadcast to one person, but not another. So again, it's hyper-personalization. So, you know, people tend to just not use services if they're nervous about it, which is a great way to do it. The other thing I would say is that, you know, people seem to be willing to offer quite a lot of information to the network, you know, the things that people put on Facebook, whatever, in return for obviously perceived utility. So I think as a society, we're going through a process of figuring out, you know, what we're happy sharing, and the general trend at the moment definitely seems to be sharing more and more, and there don't really seem to have been that many negative consequences yet, and there may not be. You know, it might be an unfounded fear, this one.